And we all go in to look at the sounder machine because the way I run my machine, you can see the rigs on the sounder, and as well as the fish. And, we watch the bait settle into the depth, and then all of us together, we see that fish come up out of 200 feet. And just like watching a video game, we watch the little blue dot with that our bait disappear. We all turn at the same time and watch the rod fall.
And how did it start out? Like, what was the origin story?
Too much alcohol.
Really? Okay.
Says if God wanted us to have fiberglass boats, he would have given us fiberglass trees.
It's for fishermen. It's not for taking the wife and the wife's friends.
I think that it's a really, really pretty bit.
And then there was a blur that went by and ended up in the cockpit, as far as if I can remember correctly.
Welcome back to State of Sport Fishing Podcast. I'm Nick Carullo. I'm joined with me, Anthony Pino, my co-host, captain of the Blood Money, and with Hooked Optics. Tonight we have two guests, Teddy Prager on the Revenant out of Long Island, and Captain Dave Marciano on the Hard Merchandise out of Gloucester, Massachusetts. Thanks for joining us, guys. How you guys doing?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Doing really well, Nick. Thank you. Happy to be on.
How's the weather treat you guys, the winter treat you guys up there? Dave, is your boat
cold.
in North Carolina?
Cold, rainy, and wet. No, I did not go to North Carolina this year.
I got you.
Some of the other boats did go down, but I didn't make that journey. Gotcha. That's okay with me.
Yeah. Don't have to deal with that inlet anymore.
Exactly.
That's not a welcoming place as far as that inlet's concerned.
No, it's unfortunate. They have some world-class fishing opportunities down there, but just because of the nature of that inlet, it prevents that place from really taking off. You know what I mean? I think if they had a good, safe waterway there, an inlet, which they could do if they built the jetties, but, the lot of groups oppose stuff like that. And, the fishing down there is amazing, and it truly is, the opportunities to fish. And I've just seen a glimpse of it compared to the guys who work there year-round. But
yeah, it can be special down there, that's for sure. Yellowfin fishing, big eyes, and marlin fishing later in the year.
Yeah.
It can be incredible.
So people would come around the world to go there if they could straighten that inlet out.
Yeah. Well, cool, Dave. Let's talk about how you got started, man. Obviously, you don't really need an introduction.
Sure.
So I'm so curious to hear about your story, man.
Sure. Yeah. Look, I got into fishing as a passion when I was a kid. Right. My dad sells insurance for a living, sold insurance. And, I just took to fishing as a kid with an uncle bringing me to the pond every weekend and stuff. And it just blossomed from there. My dad didn't really know nothing about fishing. And then, that passion turned into a job when I was about 11 or 12 years old. I started working on the local party charter head boats in the area, simply by happenstance. I was the kid, I used to take my money I made from mowing lawns or whatever during the week and the allowance money and jump on the boats on the weekend. And, one day the older kid who used to work the boat didn't show up. So the owner, said, "Hey, kid, you want a job?" Right. That's where I got into fishing, just like everybody else, scrubbing bait cups, and worked my way up, and all through high school and a little after in the 80s, I wound up as far south as Key West, Florida, doing the whole charter party thing with the Yankee fleet, and then getting into commercial fishing to mix it up a little bit. Down the Keys too, I used to do 10-day trips for groupers and snappers out of there in between party boat trips. And then life happens, you get married, you have kids, and that's where I kind of oriented more towards the commercial end of fishing. So the majority of the past 30 years or so has been spent for me gill netting, long lining, dragging, whether it's my boat or, there's times a year because of regulations, we couldn't make income, in the inshore grounds. So we jump on bigger offshore boats, to keep the money coming in because we need a paycheck every week, just like everybody else does. So, that's how I wound up fishing for these giant tuna. And that was just one small portion of our year, basically a 4-month season. And then the idea, they came into town looking for the idea to do that show. And the first words out of my mouth is there a check involved, right? I'm a commercial fisherman. You want to get on the boat? I expect to get a check out of it. And, for me, it wasn't much really at first, but they were going to look over our shoulder while we were going to work, basically. So, at the end of the year, it was like getting a check for, 3 or 4 or 5 fish that we didn't catch. So it was, if nothing else, a bonus check for me and the crew. So that's the way I looked at it. And, now here we are, season 11 airing right now. Wow. We just got our pickup letters to film season 12 coming up in July. And, not in a million years did I ever see, I never saw that coming out of nowhere. You know what I mean? That's what's great about this country, I guess.
What was your first, when you're like, oh, they're going to film, did you have this in, like, you didn't have any of this in your mind? You were just like, they're going to film me fishing?
No. It's, it's funny. I told the family, hey, I signed this deal. We're going to make a TV show. And, they all said, yeah. My sisters and whatnot. And even it was like that for us because they came and they filmed all summer. And then, it wasn't until the middle of the winter when that first season started to air, and then it actually hit. Like all of a sudden you're looking at yourself on the TV program, and, it reminded me of when you played with a tape recorder when you were as a kid, right? All I could think was, is that what I really sound like?
Oh my
is that what I look from behind? You know what I mean? And, again, it's been a crazy, wild ride. Been a great opportunity. The biggest opportunity I think we've had from it is the opportunity to expand our charter business. And as a fisherman, it's always about taking advantage of opportunity. And right now, because of the show, because of the notoriety, basically we're a charter boat with a TV commercial that runs for, 30 to 40 weeks a year, if you count both shows, right? So who wouldn't jump at that opportunity? And it's certainly been reflective. I'll be the first to admit that's probably the only reason I went to 2 boats from one. If it weren't for the show, it'd probably be me and my son running the one boat. But because of the opportunity there to expand, we were booking one boat every available day. So why not get 2? My son has his captain's license.
Now, was the charter fishing a product of the show, or did you charter fish before?
Well, no. We always dabbled a little bit because as the world was changing as a commercial fisherman, charter fishing. And again, I had my roots and I got my license from my days in the potty boat days, right? So we would do a few trips, not many, but there was always, a couple months when things got slow. And if we would do a few charters, and let's face it, you saw the boat and it's come a long way since the start of the show with the opportunities to work with companies. But, I had an old slimy commercial boat. We didn't even have a head on the boat. So the clients, I worked with, I had to, I guess my angle was I would tell guys, look, you can go on those fancy boats with the bankers and the lawyers who just fish in the summertime. Or if you want to get dirty and you want to get covered with blood, you can jump on the boat with me. I fish 300 plus days a year, right? I did have, cheaper prices than the fancy boats because look at the boat I was offering, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we had a fairly decent following, and some of those guys still fish with me today, but it was a different experience, you know what I mean? And now, of course, we've expanded in that direction so much more with both boats.
I mean, Dave, are you seeing clients come from the show from different places, not just Massachusetts?
Oh yeah. Look, we've had clients from around the world. We'd have clients from, in these the exceptions, not the rule, but we've had clients from Germany, Australia. 2 seasons ago, we had a couple who owned a dairy farm off an island of the coast of France that I never even knew existed, right? So
that's cool.
Literally, it's been an opportunity to meet people from around the world. The show is in 21 countries in 48 different languages. Wow. So yes, that opportunity to do, get business from around the world exists. Yeah. And, the way we run our business is simple. Whether it's myself or my son, our philosophy is, look, people may come the first time because of the TV show, but they'll come back if we treat them well, right?
Yep.
And since then, we've managed to build that, for 7, 8, 9 years now.
Nice.
Wow. It's awesome.
Dave, I was wondering, do you just exclusively bluefin fish, or do you kind of just do whatever?
Oh, no. Look, we're in New England, and New England is a seasonal area, and it's a seasonal fishery. Right now, we just started mid-April with our haddock season, and we'll do the haddock thing. Haddock is our local bottom fish. Very good eating. Not very exciting to catch. We use a high-low rig and a 16-ounce bank sinker, and we'll, fish anywhere from 120 to 350 feet of water for them. But they're very good eating, and it's what we have. And we have our diehard clients who look forward to that. And we'll do that till round about mid-June when some tunas actually show up. And then we'll roll with the tuna thing right through to Thanksgiving now.
Wow.
And I'll be the first to admit, that's all because of the show. In seasons past, before that, for me as a commercial fisherman, the key to being successful at tuna fishing was knowing when not to go. Mm-hmm. So we would go when we could catch 3 or 4 a week and make a paycheck every week. And as soon as it slowed down, we'd go put the gill nets out or the lobster traps out or, whatever it took to catch steady income.
Yeah. Nice. Do you still commercial fish for other gill netting and stuff like that, Dave?
Not so much anymore for my boats.
I gotcha.
Number one, the regulations have changed, so it was a good time for me to kind of transition to more of a full-time charter operation. Plus, it's the opportunity. I mean, again, we can book literally all the available days we have.
That's amazing.
So, why wouldn't you go for commercial fishing? You roll the dice every time you leave the dock. At least with a charter operation, I mean, you guys are familiar with that. At least you're getting a check on the way down the harbor, and then it only gets better from there.
Yeah.
Dave, I got a question. Bringing it back a little bit. I heard, you said the Yankee fleet in Key West. I grew up going down there doing that with my dad.
Okay.
I know how good of fishing that was, and I'm sure when you did it was probably, the tortugas back then was insane.
Yeah, back then we could, actually keep the Jewfish.
Yeah.
When I did it, we would routinely, the good skippers, we would, do some great snapper and grouper fishing, and then they always had a few wrecks where, on the last couple stops before we go home, we'd go for some big guns, right? We get some big blacks, and, if you were lucky enough to get, one of the Jewfish out of the wrecks, that would be the kind of topper for the trip.
Yeah.
Now, what ruined that, though, is, that bang stick fishery with the divers, because then as divers slowly collected those numbers, seeing boats fishing there, you'd go on a party boat and you'd hook a dozen big fish, and if you're lucky, you'd land one, right? When the bang sticks got on the scene, they would come back to Key West with every fish that lived on the wreck. There was we just watched it happen. That was during the period of time, and we went from catching them every trip to it becoming a very rare event, when we finally found a place where there was any of them left. So it's great to see that they made a heck of a comeback.
Yeah. What year was that, Dave? What years? So
that would be 84 through maybe 88.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And then were the bank sticks, when they did that, were they doing that commercially as well, or were they just
it was commercial diving.
I got
commercial, you know what I mean? And they were zooming around in the scarabs, were the big boats back then for these commercial dive operations. And they would come in. I remember, they would come in, and those scarabs always had the rails, a little short, stubby rail that went all the way around the bow. And they would just tool into Key West Harbor, with 30 Jewfish hanging from the jaw around the boat.
Wow.
And well, it was when they were effective because you hit it with the bang stick, you swim it up 30 feet so the bladder blows. And then one guy would be in the boat just collecting them up, tying them off to the rail.
Did anybody see that? Was anybody like, this is going to be over soon? Or
everybody knew it, but let's face it, as a country, we made a lot of mistakes with commercial fishing, whether it's with nets or the situation I just described or with long lines, right? But again, that was, if you go back, 40 years now, when we really started to look at fisheries and the best way to manage them, cities like Boston and New York and all around the country, we would pile the trash that they collect in the front of the house on the barges.
Go dump them in the ocean
every day and dump it out in the ocean. I mean, we're still cleaning up the areas. Us guys who fish with nets, we're still cleaning that mess up to this day. So it was just where society was at. And I guess the 80s was the tail end of that, where, society in general changed, right? The generations before us never thought about, is there going to be a future, right? And you guys are probably all around my age. We kind of grew up, at least speaking for myself, when I came in, a lot of fisheries were at that low point, and I've watched them do nothing but get better, because, it was in 1972, we implemented the Sustainable Fisheries Act, was voted into Congress 100-0, unanimous vote. And, since then, under the law, all our commercial fisheries, we have to, the short version is, first we have to rebuild them to historic levels, and then we can fish them. We have to fish them sustainably. And that includes the recreational fisheries as well. So, I mean, and it's a bumpy road. I'm sure you guys are well aware. All fisheries have some issues. Red snapper is one that I hear about a lot down there in Florida now, right? But the good news is it's not a perfect system, but it does work. It's a sloppy system we have here, but we have a lot of fully rebuilt fisheries. When I was in the Keys in the 80s, we very rarely, if ever, caught a red snapper. And, we were doing a lot of fishing, right? And back then, that time had passed. And it's very similar, now you guys complain about, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but now you have a great, robust season and it's over really quick because there's a lot of fish to catch. And the reason there's a lot of fish to catch is because there's those quotas in place. And the same thing holds true for like the haddock fishery that we is thriving up here in New England. When I was a kid, we would see 2 or 3 haddock a season, and all I ever heard about was the old days when we caught these haddock. And now I'm running my business, and we can catch haddock 2 or 3 a minute.
Wow. I mean, what do you? Sorry.
Go ahead, Teddy.
I mean, Dave, while we're on that topic, I mean, what do you see as far as the giant bluefin up there? And I feel like these restricted fishing days and these quotas and everything's really working. I mean, we're seeing a lot more fish down here than we've ever seen off Long Island with these tunas coming through, giants, all sizes. I just wanted to get your take on what you guys are seeing up there with the fishery and how.
Oh yeah, well that's the fantastic thing. All season long, guys are messaging me about the fishing down there, because I have connections up and down the coast, and they're like, "Oh, you got to come down here. It's on fire," right? The problem is, it was on fire in my backyard too, and every place in between.
Yeah,
all the way down to down East Maine, and so yes, the fishing days are frustrating. Yes, the prices are going to suck because there's a lot of fish around. Welcome to Commercial Fishing 101. But the whole reason that's happening is because of the sacrifices, that were made. And again, I'm not saying I support everything that's done wholeheartedly, right? I was very active in the fisheries management program with the New England Fisheries Management Council up here in New England for decades. And that was my interest was directed towards the gill netting and the long lining that I did. But I was very active. And again, it's a sloppy process, but fundamentally we all support what we're doing. We all want to see more fish. And then ultimately, when these fish stocks do come back, and now we have dozens and dozens of examples of fully rebuilt fishery. We've already mentioned redfish, jewfish, haddock, and now giant bluefin tuna. And so obviously it's the oldest adage in the book, fishermen love to catch fish, and we hate stopping when the fishing is good as it is. But I think deep down, we all realize now, it's important that we do give them that break. So we can go out next year and experience the same type of fishing.
Yeah. It seems to just be getting better and better the last few years, and just seeing more fish out in the canyons, more fish close shore, mid shore. It's just up and down the coast from you to me, and just it's great to see. I mean, a lot of different people getting involved.
I've seen them off of Ocean City in the dead of summer in July, when we're catching, having a decent white marlin bite or something. Next thing you know, the whole ocean opens up with them. It's crazy.
Yeah.
We've never seen anything like that in Ocean City before. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So, how's that navigating that, Dave? With the regulations, do you have to have people on the boat, or
well,
did you ever have to have people on
commercial
the boat?
fishery? Yes, the commercial fishery for years we're required by law to carry observers, and we could never say no. If they asked, it was somewhat random. They would call, and the thing is, just if you were asked to carry observers on any given day, it was illegal to say no. That was part of the regulation. Nowadays, with the advent of technology, a lot of it's done by cameras. But so you leave the dock, the cameras are rolling. It's just like this. You've got cameras strategically mounted all over the vessel, and they got people up at NIPS in the building monitoring everything that goes on a commercial fishing boat. But then you can ask during that was a frustrating time watching that develop, because you had the regional administrator pushing that whole observer program and enacted those laws. And then he retired and started a business that was one of the only businesses that were certified by the government to be the observers on the boat. So
That's
it was
not surprising at all.
you know what I mean? It's like it's junior varsity politics sometimes with these fisheries management councils, where they create a law and then they know what to do. They retire and they create the company. Again, it was like people couldn't believe it when I tell them that story. The regional administrator was instrumental in creating those laws, and then he went ahead and retired after 4 years at NIMS and started the company, which. But at first, I think he had an exclusive for 6 years. So his was the only company that was certified by NIMS to be allowed to put observers on the boat. And those observers are expensive. Now, yes, there was government funding that paid for it in the first few years, but it's since gone. If you do have to have an observer, it comes out of the captain, the owner is responsible for it. But these observers are making more than the damn crews.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Right. I heard the stats once when it got really bad. That's where I kind of exited fisheries management in the 90s, late 90s. Maybe it was early 2000s. But, they talk about NIPS, and as a commercial fisherman, and again, they did a big report on what's all this take to manage, right? And it came out, the conclusion of the report there was 27 full-time, government employees at NIPS to manage one boat like mine with myself and 2 crew.
Oh, wow.
And those are government jobs. Those ain't the dreaded private sector jobs.
Yeah.
So
gotcha. That's wild.
But
That's not surprising, but it's wild.
Fundamentally, we all support what NIPS is trying to do. I think we can all agree there. We may have arguments sometimes. And that's NIPS, the fisheries managers, their most favorite technique is divide and conquer, pit user group against user group, because they know, and I've been preaching this for years, that's what the government fears. If all fishermen, whether you're commercial or recreational, realized in some sense that we're all in the same boat and we were a unified industry, then the government wouldn't be able to walk on all of us. Yeah. But meanwhile, they create these regulations that literally, because of the perceptions, give one user group a leg up over another user group, so it keeps the industry divided. And that way, politicians look at the industry as a whole and go, why would we want to support any of these guys? They can't even get along with each other.
Wow. Yeah,
right? I mean, am I wrong? You guys,
no.
And then in the middle of that, you've got the environmental industry, and they're the real bullies on the block, because for a politician, if he even tries to stick up for fisheries issues, if a politician these days gets labeled anti-environment, his career's over. Right? So it makes it tricky to navigate. But again, I'll still go back. Fundamentally, I do support everything that we're trying to do, because in all of our areas in different ways, we've seen some of the positives.
It's cool that we have highlighted so many of the positives, because it can be tough. Like we have in Maryland, or like from Maryland all the way up for where you guys are, we're dealing with these striped bass now, and it's not going well, and it's going to be a journey to rebuild it.
Right. And, in the striped bass is a great one. When I was a kid, I would spend all summer, one of my aunts had a house on one of the rivers. Literally the name of the river was the Bass River. It was the saltwater brackish river. And again, I'd fish all summer for 1 or 2 stripers. And then in the 2000s, it got really good. We could catch literally hundreds a night. And then now it's taking a dip again. But now here's the thing with stripers. I often don't think a lot of it is fishing pressure. Those fish move. Now, I know from my travels as a commercial fisherman, I've seen schools of striped bass out on George's Bank. Schools of striped bass 10 miles wide, and they're all 30 or 40-pound fish, right? They go on forever. It takes an hour to steam through them. Now, they're not there every season, but I think what happens, now you take an example of what we've seen with the tuna fish down along the coast, right? You know, there's been times where on George's, the stripers are so thick, you can't fish a bait. You can't fish a mackerel or a herring or a squid because you'll catch nothing but stripers. And I may or may not have got pretty good at catching 600 or 800-pound fish with 40-pound stripers on the hook. Because when you can't get clear of them, you can see them as plain as day. The schools go on for miles. Yeah. Now, I mentioned this at Gray's Taxidermy one time. I'm a member of the board of directors. I was surrounded by other 20 body boat guys, and they all laughed at me. They said, "You're out of your mind. Stripers are a coastal species." Now, I know from my career as a gill netter and in dragon and longlining, they are not strictly a coastal species. That's to presume science. Yeah. And it was funny. I almost got laughed out of the room when I said that, except it was the owner of Gray's Taxidermy, Bill Doblair. Right. Since then, if you guys have been following stripers, they put those satellite tags in the striped bass. And what are they finding now? These fish did, we haven't got one going to George's yet, but they found them in the canyons now numerous times after they tag them in the Hudson River. Yeah. Right. Now, this is something that, again, as commercial fishermen, we can't say that out loud. We can't say, because we can't possess those fish on our boats. So you didn't have all these years, you didn't have us jumping up and down going, hey, there's stripers here on George's Bank. We're throwing millions of pounds away. Yeah. Right? Because of the nature of the beast. And because somebody would use that information to club you over the head. Right? And that's the divide and conquer part of fisheries management. And we've got to get away from that. If you, no matter who you are, if you want good fisheries management, we've got to learn to come together so all these issues, all those little intricacies can be discussed and we can have better fisheries management comes from better science. Let's face it, they manage all our fisheries, and the term under the law, the Sustainable Fisheries Act, is the best available science must be used, right? Yeah. Now, what that translates into is the only available science. That's the science the government has. I can give you dozens of examples of when commercial fishermen in certain instances were able to get funding or able to do funding, scallops in New England here, scallops or scallops, whatever you want to call them, the sea scallop. They were going to lose that industry because the regulations were coming so thick. So literally scallopers who knew better got together and they worked with, I think it was UMass Dartmouth, and they got cameras to go down. They towed them along the bottom and they showed them, in some of these areas where they said scallops didn't exist, there was scallops the size of pie plates dying of old age, right? And that brought about the whole concept in this country of rotational area management, because these scallops were in areas that were closed to ground fishing. And one of the benefits that came, hey, we closed these areas to protect cod in haddock, but the scallop resource thrived in there. But again, because nobody was fishing in there, nobody knew about it. So that's why we took cameras down, and it took millions of dollars. Again, that's just one example where creating the better science allowed us to change the laws, and now that scallop fishery is the number one money maker. I think New Bedford was listed as the highest producing port, for dollar value in the country because of that scallop fishery. Wow. And it's very well managed, right? Because there's good science. Now that didn't impact me. I didn't do much scalloping. One that impacted me was monkfish or anglerfish for gill netting, right? That was a very important fishery for us. It's not one many recreational anglers are familiar with. because it's rare to catch them on a rod. You can't really target them with a rod, but we caught them with our gill net, and we made a lot of money doing it. And then we were gonna lose that fishery due to the stock assessment. And then when we got to the nuts and the bolts of it, so they have the government survey boats that, collect and sample fish. They go out, they make a tow, they count the fish. They project out the age, the health of the stock, the health of the biomass based on age, structure, and sample size in these survey tows, right? So they were projecting out the health of the monkfish resource. We found out with as little as 4 animals that they caught in these survey trawls over the past 3 years. They were going to shut us down because they were projecting the health of the resource 10 years out, because that's what required by law, based on 4 fish that came up in the net.
That's wild.
Right? So again, we got money together, we got funding, we did a study, and we came up with a better solution that allowed fishermen like me to stay in business. But yes, we reduced, we changed the way we did business enough to keep that a healthy, robust, consistent fishery.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So again, there's many other examples. Bluefin tuna is one too.
Yeah, interesting. We're learning a lot, Dave. This is informative.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. Yeah.
Very so. Dave, you recently built a new boat, right?
No.
No,
are you kidding me? Both my boats are 30 years old. Have you seen the cost of these new boats these days?
I'm aware.
No, my boat's got new paint. Let's get clear, right?
I got you. I thought you had a new boat built.
In the new to me boat, the Falcon was built in 1986.
Okay, so it was a new to you boat.
Listen, if I had the money to slow down for one of these brand new boats these days, let me tell you something right here and now. The last thing I would do is blow it on a boat. I'd be fishing down there with you.
That's right.
I wouldn't be up here in New England freezing my hats off.
No. Dave, what's the Falcon? A Torres?
Yes, it's a 43 Torres. Built down there in Key West, Florida. Yep.
Oh yeah.
And the hard merch is a Novi boat. It was built in it's a 34-foot Daniels Head Novi, built in Daniels Head, Nova Scotia.
Wow.
No, they look good. They look good with the new paint.
Yeah, well, that's it. New paint. We have a saying that, as a commercial fisherman, our tagline was always a little putty and paint, make her what she ain't.
Gotcha. Is that the Torres a Down East style boat too, even though it was built in Florida?
No. It was when it came into the harbor.
It's a lobster boat.
What?
Well, it's a lobster boat from where Dave is and where you're at, Nick, are two different things.
I grew up on a 43 Torres too. It was a charter boat in Miami.
Right.
Yeah.
When she came into the harbor, she was a charter boat. She had what the hell do you call it? I don't even know.
Fly bridge.
That's how much of a non-sport fisherman I am. They had the fly bridge. That's it. That's the word I'm looking for. Right? And the other guy who bought it before me took a Sawzall to the fly bridge and made it sort of a express commercial boat. And he used to do the bluefin tuna fishery and run down to the canyons with it, right? Mm-hmm. So, he had ripped out all the couches and everything else in the salon. Is that what you guys call it?
That's what it's called.
Right? And he had a couple of big, giant, boxes in there that we back fished in.
Nice.
And then I've since made it more oriented to chartering again.
I got you. So I was going to ask you, because we asked Teddy this, I guess we know your answer. I have a hard time not being up, on being able to see but Teddy, you run the 61 Viking, and then you have a commercial boat too, right, Teddy?
Yes. Yep. 40 young brothers, Down East boat.
And you said you prefer to fish on the Down Easter.
Yeah. You lose the speed and maybe lose a little bit of comfort, but I don't know. I like to be on that same level as everybody and fishing on the same platform and being down in the action. I don't know. I'll take this. I'll lose the speed. It's all right.
Yeah.
I'm afraid of heights, so those fly boats. A few times I've been on boats and guys have taken me out fishing. They're like, "You want to come up? You want to come up?" I'm like, "No, I'm good.
I'm good.
I'm good."
Gotcha. So we know where you stand there. That's not the debate for you, huh?
Right. And nothing against it. You know what I mean? Look, if money wasn't an object for me, and you know what I mean? If money was really no object, I'm sure I'd have a big ass fancy boat too. But for me, boats are a means to an end. They're the means to that retirement. And again, if I ever get to retirement, the last thing I'm going to do is blow it on a boat. Fortunately, because of the show, the nice thing about the show is now I've got invitations literally around the world. All I got to do is show up and they go, hey, Cap Dave, want to come with us? So
Yeah.
I just got to spin it into some travel money.
Yeah.
Now, Dave, did you do some of the long range fishing out of California? I think I saw you were out there a couple times.
Yes, I
cool.
did. You know what
boat? What boat?
I
did
was
you
the
go
Royal
on?
Polaris.
Awesome.
On the Royal, and look, that's all because of the show. Now we all know if you're into fishing, that's like the pinnacle of the sport fishing industry. Are those long range trips on the West Coast, right? We do the 10-day, and next year, I guess the group of guys I get in with, they do a couple charters a year. They want to expand it to a 16-day trip.
Wow.
But when I was a kid, that boat was built, right? Like I remember distinctly, me and my buddies, we used to walk home from school and we would buy used copies of, I think it was Field and Stream and Saltwater Sportsman, right, for a nickel at the used bookstore. And we'd lay in my mom's dining room on the floor and flip through the pages, right? And there was 3 of us, and we talked about going fishing on the Royal Polaris someday. And that boat was new back then, right?
Yeah.
Now, both those guys are no longer with us. But, because of the show and things have gotten progressively better for us, I guess 4 years ago, I finally had an opportunity to go do that. And then I've done it every year since. It's become an annual thing for me with the same group of guys. And so that's been really cool, and I love fishing with those guys because they treat me like shit, like everybody else. They don't treat, and when I go out there too, when I first went out, I didn't know nothing. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
that's the fun part of fishing, going and figuring it all out.
Yeah, I did the Excel long range. I did 16 and a 17 day.
Yeah.
And, it takes you a couple of days to figure it out. You got the California guys that do it every year. They know what they're doing right away. So you're watching them trying to figure it out. And we're in like the braid belts.
Yeah.
You can't do that on that boat. The next year we went back with the rail rods. We were fighting the fish off the rail because you're just trying to shimmy 126 feet to follow your fish around the boat. So like, nope, we're not doing the belts next year. But that fishery is just something else. I mean, it's really cool. You're fishing 900 miles offshore and you're just on the water for days and days. And, it goes quick. 17 days goes quick. A lot of people, you tell them, they're like, can't do 17 days on a boat. And I'm like, no, it goes fast. I mean, the first 4 days is all travel.
Yeah.
You're just steaming 10 knots to the fishing grounds. But that's really something it's awesome that you could do that. I got to get back out there. That's some fishery out there.
So what do you guys think when I don't know how big the yellowfins were, but I'm sure you've caught yellowfins the size of some of the bluefins you caught. What fights harder? What would be? I mean, I think it's a more prestigious catch for you, a 250 pound yellowfin, or? I mean,
it's just like the difference, I guess, is like you're finding it in thousands of feet of water. You're fishing the seamounts, and like I said, we did the rail rods the next couple of years, so. There's no harness. There's no belt. You got the rod under your armpit. And, these big yellowfin, when they get up over 200 pounds, they can pull. I mean, they fight to the last circle. I mean, it's crazy. A lot of the big fish, like my second year when I went, we're coming on the chunk line. So we're catching 80, 90 pound yellowfin, and they're cutting these fish up, chunks. Like they're chunking. Wow. With 80 and 90 pound yellowfin. And it's like, you wait your turn, you get your little chunk of yellowfin, like this is a piece of sushi, you're putting it on the hook, you're burying your hook in it. And like, they got the tubes coming out from under the boat so the birds can't get them. And you just wait for one to pop out, you throw yours behind it, and you just see the sickles just come up behind the boat, and it's just 200 pounders boiling behind the boat. I mean, it's impressive. But the rail rod's definitely a different fight than out of a belt. I actually think it's a cooler fight, but I would say a yellowfin, 250 pound yellowfin probably fights harder than like a 250 pound bluefin. But I think once you get on those giants, they probably take over with those yellowfins. But I don't know, Dave, what did you pull on when you were out there?
Well, let's see. I've gotten a few yellowfin close to the 200 mark. I haven't broken 200 yet. But let's face it, we're using, the tackle is everything out there. and it's completely different than what we use here for these giants. And, look, I was here, I think the bluefin fight harder. Like you said, when you get up to that pound range. And, I wouldn't even like to think about catching one on a railrod. No, we did some stand-up fishing. No, we just caught in the last episode, we caught a 650 pounder on stand-up gear, but we were using a belt when we did it. And we did it with an accurate 50 wide. And that was a great thing. We're building our confidence with that gear. In the past, I would never even try it. But because of my experience on the West Coast, I started to get confidence with those smaller rods, right? Because again, for these giants, I caught my first few hundred fish with a hand line. Because as a commercial fisherman, you'd set up a milk crate, call it a basket, some parachute cord, and 150 feet, a 300-pound mono, and you could go catch giant tuna. And that was, you could set up 6 rigs for $120 back then, right? Or $100, you had 6 rigs ready to go, six baited hooks out, right? So, and then it progressed. We watched it go. While we were hand lining, the marinas were full with sport boats with chairs on them, right? And again, commercial fishermen, now that we started to get rods, because the thing about hand lining is if you're going to catch them with a hand line, you need 3 guys who are all very competent. You need one guy to drive the boat, one guy to fight to throw the harpoon, and one guy to fight the fish in the hand line. And that was always my job. I used to love fighting them on the hand line. That's fun. But
I can only imagine.
Like all the guys who taught me how to hand line, they'd come at you with missing a digit at you, right? That's part of the racket. Now, I came through that. But all them old timers who taught me, they'd go, "You got to be careful, Dave." When they'd see me grabbing the line wrong and stuff. But then the rods came into play. And again, now commercial fishermen are playing with these rods, right? And, it's $100 for an extra rod holder that you can drill a hole in the rail of your workboat and put beside the controls that are already there versus buying a $10,000 chair and a fly bridge and an extra set of controls, right? So we would just plunk the rod in the holder near the hauling controls where we hauled our gill netters, right? Where we hauled our gill nets because it was simple, clean, and effective. And then progressively, all the sport boats started leaving those fancy chairs at the dock and fighting them out of their holders too, because it was effective. You couldn't deny the result. And now up here, see the boat with an actual fighting chair on it. Although we have, the transient vessels who come in the summer, the big fancy Vikings and all that. But, it's a rare animal to see somebody fighting a fish out of a chair up here in this giant fishery anyway.
Yeah, I feel like they're just, these companies are coming out with new rods that are made to fight out of the rod holder. They got soft.
I think
tips,
I think that's totally down to the TV show. I think everybody
wants
everybody wants to be like Dave fighting fish out of the rod holder.
We're gonna get rich and go tuna fishing. So, meanwhile, they show up out there with a $500,000 center console with 4 motors on it. So, I don't think, there has been, I guess, an increase in guys trying, but nobody's buying boats to come do this. Those guys already had those boats anyway. So they're just making a one more step investment of grabbing a few poles and giving it a go. But that's because the resource is so healthy.
Yeah.
But, and that's why I still support the fishery as it is, an open access fishery. I think it's criminal when we bring fisheries to the ITQs or like we did in New England in the sectors. Basically the government winds up selling the resource off to the highest bidder, and those people own a percent of the fish in the sea forever. I think that's wrong, in my opinion.
It's criminal.
It is. If people really understood, again, and that's why divide and conquer keeps everybody guessing. People don't even know the truth of fisheries management.
Gotcha. That's amazing. Nikki, any questions?
Teddy, how many people are on those long range trips?
The one that I went on, we had 24 people. So they usually cap it at like 24. A lot of California guys. We had a couple, like the first 2 years I did it, it was just me and my father and like 2 other New York guys. And then the rest of the guys are all California. And then the last year we did it, we got like a big group of New Yorkers to go. I think we wound up with like 20 guys from New York on the trip. So it was actually really cool. That was that one where they actually picked us up in Cabo and took off a couple of days of steaming. I think it was like 2 days to get to the fishing ground. But yeah, you see some serious tangles at times at 4 a.m. when everyone's trying to fish a big mackerel, and I think I'm bit. No, you're not bit. You're hooked up to 3 other people right now. But no, it's definitely like it's a cool fishery. I wish I could do it, sometime soon. It just got really expensive to go out there and do it, but hopefully can get back out there one of these days and do that fishing again, because it's nothing you could ever like picture. It's kind of like, they fish 2 spots for the most part. They fish like Clarion Island, and then there's another spot they call like Hurricane Bank, Shimano Seamount, where we were fishing, and it's like crazy yellowfin fishing at some times, and the wahoo fishing can just be unbelievable. You can catch 200 wahoo in 3 hours for the whole boat.
Wow.
And I think my last trip we did when we had all those New Yorkers, we wound up pulling the anchor early. I think we had 3 days in a row where the boat had over 80 yellowfin for the boat each day. And, they got to the point where like, if it's not over 180, it's getting cut off.
Wow.
Because you're dealing with too is like the Mexican regulations. You've got a 30 fish limit per person for the entire 14-day trip.
Wow.
Yep.
And that's you know what I mean? And like last year we get into a big school, a nice big jumbo mahi, but the mahi count for 3 fish right now under the Mexican regulations, right? Yeah. So that's, in when you think about it, you go, geez, 30 fish over 10 days or 12 days or 15 days. But so you pick what you want to keep. And on a trip like that, though, you can be a little selective. Okay, I'm going to keep a couple of yellowfin or 1 yellowfin. And then I'm pretty sure there's limits on how many yellowfin and how many wahoo as well. Like, you can't keep all 30 of any one species. So it's a fairly decently managed fishery, even from the Mexican waters perspective. They do put limits on it.
Nice. What do they do with you keep 30 fish a person per trip. Like, do they sell some of it?
Oh, no. That's the one thing which is very unique. Those fish are sport fishing only. There is no commercial fishing. If you get caught selling those fish out there, you'll be, there'll be hell to pay. They take that very seriously.
Wow.
Now, what happens is when you get in the dock, all the places, have processors that will meet you at the boat. And yes, you can bring the fish home yourself. They have refrigerated holds. The fish come in, really well taken care of. They're just above freezing, right? And that's how they preserve them.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll process your fish for you, right? So you tell them, you can opt out. They'll process it, portion size it, vacuum seal it. And like in my case, they'll ship it right to the house here across the country. Now that gets very expensive. So I usually wind up giving, 2/3 of my fish away to some of the local boys, because at least it gets processed and then they can drive and pick it up. When, you don't want to ship 1,000 pounds of fish across the country, right? Especially like I have no interest really in yellowfin tuna. But I like the wahoo, and then some of the snappers and groupers we run into on those trips. Like, those are fish I don't have access to.
Yeah.
If I want fish, normally I can bring it home. So I limit to what I bring home to what I can't get access to. I've had my fill of tuna.
I'm sure.
We did
wahoos out there.
They're nice fish. They're probably that 40 to 60 pound range. A lot of them. Nice. There's no you don't see many over 100 pounds, but no, they bite. I mean, it's cool. They'll pull like 4 Rapalas behind the boat, and 1 or 2 will go off, and then they kind of stop. They swing the boat, and then everybody else can either diamond jig or yo-yo jig, or you could do live bait, and it gets interesting when you start hooking them up because they're just flying all over the place. But sometimes it's full speed. It's cool. You catch a lot. Everyone's hooked up. You're talking 20 guys hooked up to wahoo at one time.
Wow. That's sick.
On little gear too. These are rods you can cast. That's It's the wahoo. We were casting the wahoo bombs. And for me, I like the yellowtails out there. The Pacific yellowtails with the surface irons. Those are
they fight hard.
That's what I live for out there. I could do that shit all the time. the tuna fishing, I'll just say, sit around and smoke butts and watch other guys latch onto these fish and get their ass kicked. I just laugh.
That's awesome. Anthony, what do you say? We'll do one of those trips?
I would love to, man.
You should.
I got to go with people I like. 14 days is. Oof.
And there, he's right. It flies by. It becomes, because everything's provided. The food is fantastic, and it sounds like a long time, but once you get into the groove, all of a sudden you go, "Wow, we're going home already."
Yeah,
it goes by. It really does.
That's cool.
So I guess in closing, Dave, we got this question, and Teddy, I don't know if I've asked this one to you, Teddy, or not, but do you have like a day that keeps you going? I mean, you fish thousands of days. Like, you fish more rough days than we fish days in our life, the three of us. So what is there a certain day that maybe when you're like, man, I don't really want to get out of bed, but you know that you could have a day like that again that kind of keeps you going?
Oh, what do you mean? Like
it doesn't even have to be like a lot of fish, but just a special day for you. You know what I mean? Like some day that makes
I get it. Okay. So I guess that would be a special day. Would be the day I caught, my biggest tuna to date, a 1,200 pounder, right? 1,200 pound bluefin. Now, what was cool is my son was young. He was 9 or 10. And we used to have to flip over a fish tote on the deck so he would be tall enough to reach the reel and fight the fish out of the holder. So on that day, and he didn't come every day. He had school and stuff. So he happened to be there. He was going to come for the weekend and spend the weekend on the boat with Jay and I. And that fish, we had him in the chum for hours. We fed that fish 200 pounds of chum and we couldn't hook him. Right? And those bluefin get like that. They don't get big being stupid. We could see him, and he would eat every piece of bait that hit the water, except the ones with a hook in it, right? and we have a lot of tricks that we've learned over here to overcome that. But ultimately, though, but I told him, I said, keep jigging bait, because he used to love to jig bait. And but when you've got 2 or 3 tunas under the boat, the bait fish get scarce. But he kept at it. He kept working that bait rig down the bottom. And then finally he got us, a nice live bait fish. And so, again, after hours of knowing what this was, we knew it was a big fish. We just couldn't hook them. And this happens a lot. They'll eat till they're full and then they leave. And then you have to wait 6 more hours for the next tide when he comes back, and you'll get another crack at him. But so we get the live bait, we put it on the hook, I set it down to the depth, and we all go in to look at the sounding machine, because the way I run my machine, you can see the rigs on the sounder, and as well as the fish. And we watch the bait settle into the depth, and then all of us together, we see that fish come up out of 200 feet, and just like watching a video game, we watch the little blue dot with our bait disappear. We all turned at the same time and watched the rod fold. And that wound up being, the biggest fish of my life to this point, 1,200 pound bluefin tuna. What was cool about it is my son was with me that day, along with my nephew, right? So that's a story, and that moment and the way it all unfolded, him and I will remember that story till the day we die.
Yeah.
Right? So forget about the money, forget about everything else. Like, that's just a great story. So I think that's what you were trying to get at.
That's probably exactly what I would be getting at.
Yeah.
So that's amazing.
What about you, Teddy?
Awesome. I mean, I think the thing that keeps me going out there, I just love big eye tuna fishing and fishing for big eyes. And, we try to go every November, which is, pretty late in the season for us to be going out to the canyons. And we go to this one spot. And I think the one story that keeps us going back is, we did it a couple of years in a row, and it seems like the big eyes always show up there. They come in with the draggers that are pulling for the squids in the late fall. And, we finally had our shot at like a big one. And I remember like when we caught it, it was kind of like we've been chasing after this fish like for years, and we finally had our shot. And it was 78-inch big eye. I called it 300, and we didn't dress it whole, or we didn't weigh it whole because I wanted to keep the meat good, and we headed it, but it dressed out at 248. So I think it was right there around 300. But I think just that fish alone, I feel like the 300-pound big eye is like the unicorn up here for us. And that's the fish that keeps me going out there every time. And it's just like, we've caught a bunch 260, 270 every year. We get big ones like that. But, I really want that 80-inch plus big eye. That's like the one fish that I'm after. But
nice.
Those are the ones that keep you going, I think, when you don't want to be out there trolling in the dark at 2 a.m. But you never know, they're there.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very nice. I've got a few big eyes over the years, but nothing in that class. Barely over 100.
Yeah, that's a monster.
Yeah.
My biggest is 281, and that thing was all we could handle on a 50.
Yeah. They kick ass, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The ones we caught on 130s, and they didn't, even though they were 100-pound fish, they didn't come right in. You still had to work it.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
Cool,
Nice.
guys. Dave, greatly appreciate the time, man. Had a really good time.
Thanks for having us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah. Thanks for
Very informative.
Yeah, all the knowledge you shared with us, man. That was great.
All right, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. All right, have a
guys.
good one, guguys. I'm
Thanks,
going to go see
guys.
if the wife's got the steaks ready here.
There you go.
All right, Dave.
Grill.
Thank you, guys.
All right,
Thank
we'll
you.
see you. Bye. Bye.
Bye.